Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. If you're not familiar with who I am, I've been hunting and guiding Western big game for over 34 years, and I've been a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach for more than 30 years. And I'm here to help you become a more successful and consistent hunter and outdoorsman. In this episode, we're talking about how to call black bears using a predator call, and more importantly, how to do it in a way that actually works. A lot of guys hear calling bears and assume it's gimmicky or low percentage. Others try it once, call for 10 minutes, see nothing, and write it off completely. The problem isn't the call. The problem is that bears don't respond like coyotes, and most hunters don't understand what actually pulls a bear out to the sound. Predator calling works on black bears for one simple reason. Bears are opportunistic predators driven by calories. When food is limited, localized, or hard to get, bears are willing to move. And when they're willing to move, you can pull them with sound, but only if you understand where to sit, how long to call, what sounds to use, and how bears approach when they finally commit. In this episode, we're cutting out everything that doesn't matter. No gear talk, no theory, no fluff. We're focusing on the decisions that determine whether a bear ever shows up at all and why most calling attempts fail before they even have a chance to work. By the end of this episode, I hope that you'll know exactly when predator calling makes sense, where to set up, how to structure a calling sequence, and what to expect when a bear finally commits and comes in quiet. Let's get into it. Predator calling works on black bears because bears are not just wanderers or scavengers stumbling into opportunity. They are calorie driven predators that survive by finding the easiest, most efficient food sources available. When you understand that, calling stops feeling gimmicky and starts making more sense. A black bear doesn't come to a call out of curiosity alone. It's because the sounds come from food that's vulnerable, stationary, and already in trouble. That's the key difference most hunters miss. You're not trying to get a reaction necessarily, you're exploiting urgency. You're presenting a scenario where calories can be gained without much effort, and that's something a bear is wired to investigate, especially when natural food is limited or scattered. This is why predator calling works best when bears are actively moving to feed. When bears are already covering ground, checking drainages, burns, edges, and transition zones for calories, a distress sound gives them a reason to commit to a direction. It doesn't necessarily create movement, it redirects it. And this is also why a lot of guys fail. They call like they're trying to entertain an animal, short sequences, random locations, no understanding of how bears approach sound. Then they quit early and assume calling doesn't work. In this episode, we're stripping that misunderstanding out completely. You're going to learn when calling actually works so you're not wasting sits. You'll learn where to set up so bears don't wind you before you ever see them. We'll cover what sounds consistently pull bears, how long you need to call, and how bears really approach a call. Slow, quiet, and usually from the direction that exposes your mistakes, even though sometimes they do come running in. Once you understand those pieces, predator calling stops being a gamble and starts becoming a repeatable tool for bears. When predator calling works for bears or doesn't has far more to do with timing and food availability than the call you're using. You can run the right sound perfectly and still fail if bears have no reason to move. Calling works best when black bears are calorie deficient and searching, not when they're comfortable and parked on easy food. That's why the highest percentage windows are spring green up and early fall before food peaks everywhere. In spring, bears are coming out of the den depleted. They've lost weight, muscle, and energy, and their entire world revolves around recovering calories. During this phase, bears are actually covering country, checking south facing slopes, burns, edges, and transition zones for anything edible. When a distress sound hits them during that window, it represents an immediate opportunity, food that doesn't require much effort. That's when calling shines. Early fall can offer a similar window, but it's narrower. Before berries, mast, or agricultural food sources are widespread, bears are still moving between pockets of feed. Once those food sources become abundant and predictable, bears stop traveling far. When food is everywhere, there's no urgency, and without urgency, calling loses its pull. Calling struggles anytime bears don't have to move to eat. If a bear can sit in one drainage, hillside, or patch of berries and feed and meet its daily caloric needs, a distress sound has little leverage. The bear doesn't need to investigate because there's no advantage in doing so. The key takeaway is simple and non negotiable. If bears are moving to feed, you can pull them. If they're parked on food, calling is much lower odds. Understanding that is going to save you time, energy, and frustration, and it tells you exactly when calling is more worth committing to. This is where a lot of predator calling attempts fail before they even start. Not because the call was wrong, but because the location was wrong. You don't call from where it feels comfortable or convenient. You call from where a bear already wants to travel. Predator calling bears doesn't pull them across bad country. It pulls bears along routes they're already using to feed efficiently. High percentage calling locations all have one thing in common: movement. In spring, that means south-facing slopes that green up first. These slopes warm early, produce feed sooner, and naturally draw bears. Timbered edges near open feed are another strong option because bears prefer to travel where cover nearby. Old burns with scattered timber are especially effective, giving bears both visibility and security. Travel corridors between bedding and feeding areas are also prime because bears move through them repeatedly and predictably. No matter where you call from, there's one rule that overrides everything else. You must be able to see downwind. Bears rely heavily on their nose, and many will try to swing downwind before committing. If you can't see that lane, you're never going to know the bear was there. Terrain setups that win are pretty simple. Open cuts that allow visibility, side hills where you can see below you, terrain that naturally limits a bear's ability to circle, forcing it to approach through visible ground. What kills setups is just as important: thick brush behind or below you, blind downwind lanes, sitting buried in cover instead of overlooking it. If a bear can approach unseen, it absolutely will, and your calling effort ends without you ever knowing why. There are two ways predator calling bears shows up in real hunts: blind calling and calling a already spotted bear. You've already seen them. Both work, but they require different discipline. Blind calling is used when you already know bears are in the area. You have sign, tracks, poop, torn up logs, feeding evidence. You're not guessing, you're setting up where bears are already moving. This approach only works when visibility and wind are controlled because you're committing to staying put and letting the bear make the next move. When blind calling, expect one thing above all else: silence. Bears don't announce themselves, right? They don't come crashing in a lot of times. Sometimes they do, but more often than not, they come sneakily. Many times, the first sign a bear is responding is when it suddenly appears far closer than you expected. That's why blind calling demands patience and full attention to your downwind and crosswind lanes. If you're casual, you're probably going to get surprised, and not in a good way. Calling a spotted bear is a different game, and when done correctly, it carries higher odds. You know he's there, right? And you can watch his behavior. If you see a bear feeding or moving with its head down, you already know it's in a food mindset. The mistake a lot of hunters make is calling immediately, and sometimes that can be backwards. Before you ever make a sound, you set up. You move to gain a wind advantage. You pick a shooting lane. You decide where you're willing to take the shot. Only after you're positioned to kill the bear do you call. The key takeaway is simple and pretty critical. Calling doesn't create bears, it redirects bears that already want to eat. When you treat it that way, both methods become controlled instead of chaotic.
This episode is brought to you by TideWe and their revolutionary see-through ground hunting blind. If you've ever hunted out of a traditional blind, you know the trade-off. Either you can't see out without cracking a window, or the second you do, you risk being spotted. That's where TideWe's see-through ground blind changes the game. From the inside, you get a full 270-degree field of view through 3 walls of one-way see-through mesh. You can see every movement outside without opening a thing. But from the outside, you stay completely concealed. Game animals can't see in, even when you're sitting just a few feet from them. This blind is fast and simple to use. The pop-up hub system lets you set up or take down in just a couple minutes. Noise-free sliding windows give you multiple shot options without spooking animals. Brush-in loops let you blend it into your surroundings, and the open bottom design makes it easy to stay quiet and comfortable. You can choose between two sizes, the 2 to 3 person or the larger 3 to 4 person version like the one I'm using here. And you've also got your choice of 150D or the more durable 300D fabric, so you can pick what fits your style of hunting best. The price of this blind is already phenomenal, but you can get another 18% off by using code BBU18 at checkout. That's BBU18.
When it comes to predator calling black bears, sound selection is about function, not preference. You're not trying to match a specific animal perfectly. You're trying to trigger a response tied to calories and opportunity. The most reliable sounds are simple and consistent: rabbit in distress, fawn in distress, and generic wounded prey sounds. Those work because they hit three critical triggers at once. They're high pitched, which carries distance and cuts through cover. They communicate urgency, which suggests the prey is vulnerable right now. And most importantly, they signal easy calories, a meal that won't fight back or escape far. Bears aren't analyzing what species is making the sound. They're assessing whether the sound represents a payoff worth moving for. Distress sounds check that box when bears are in feeding mindset. You may have heard of cub distress calls, and that's a different category entirely. It produces intense aggressive responses, especially from sows. When it works, it can work fast, but it carries higher risk and less margin for error. Bears responding to cub distress are often coming to confront, not just investigate. That means quicker approaches, tighter circles, and less tolerance for mistakes. Because of that, cub distress only belongs in setups that are already solid with good visibility, controlled downwind lanes, and clear shooting opportunities. If your setup is questionable, cub distress will expose it quickly. And another thing about cub distress, again, you're probably targeting sows there, and most of the time we want to target mature boars. A simple rule keeps all of this clean, though. If you want curiosity and controlled movement, use the prey in distress. If you want reaction and intensity, use the cub in distress, especially if you don't mind if it's a sow. Most hunters are better served mastering prey distress. It's consistent, forgiving, effective across more situations without forcing the hunt to escalate too fast, and you have a much higher chance of calling in a boar. This is the point where a lot of bear calling attempts die, not because calling doesn't work, but because guys quit too early. Black bears do not respond like coyotes most of the time. They don't sprint in, charge the sound, or give you immediate feedback all of the time. A bear that's committed is often still taking its time, evaluating the situation and deciding whether the calories are worth the risk. If you expect instant action, you're operating on the wrong timeline. An effective calling sequence for bears is pretty simple and controlled. Start at a moderate or lower volume. You're trying to introduce the sound, not shock the woods. From there, build urgency gradually, letting the sound communicate distress without sounding frantic or random. Use short pauses, not long breaks. The goal is to keep the scenario alive while giving the bear time to move. Above all, stay consistent. Erratic calling suggests uncertainty. Consistent calling suggests prey that's still alive and still vulnerable. Calling duration matters more than a lot of hunters are willing to accept. A minimum of 20 to 30 minutes is non-negotiable. They may bed down and listen. They may circle wide. They may approach slowly, especially if they're trying to confirm the situation without exposing themselves. This matters because bears are calculating, not necessarily impulsive. If the sound disappears too soon, the scenario no longer makes sense, or they get bored or distracted. The meal vanished. When that happens, the bear never has time to show itself. If you want bears to commit, your calling has to last long enough for them to make the decision to move, and that decision often happens later than you think. Understanding how black bears approach a call is really what separates clean opportunities from blown setups. Most calling failures don't happen because the bear didn't respond. They happen because the hunter didn't recognize how the bear was responding. When a bear is confident, it may come in on a direct line and pretty quick, especially as the wind is favorable and the terrain doesn't force a detour. This is the approach a lot of hunters hope for, but it's not always the most common. More often than not, bears take a slow side side hill approach, using cover and elevation to stay hidden while they assess the situation. Another frequent move is the downwind swing. Bears want confirmation. They'll try to get the wind before fully committing, and many never step into view if that lane isn't visible to the hunter. This dictates where your attention belongs. Your eyes should live downwind first, not straight in front of you. Many bears are killed or lost based on whether the hunter was watching the right lane and don't expect sound. Bears often move with shocking quiet, no branches snapping, no footsteps. One moment the area looks empty, and the next there's a bear standing in it. That sudden visual contact is what catches a lot of guys off guard. If you're fidgeting, adjusting gear, or glassing too aggressively, you'll get busted before you even realize the bear is there. There are behavioral tells worth recognizing as well. A bear with its head up and ears forward is committed and focused on the sound. A bear that's constantly stopping, lifting its nose, and sniffing is scent checking and undecided. That second bear is on the edge of leaving, so you've got to be careful in that situation. Reading those signals in real time lets you stay patient when you should and act when the window finally opens. Now I want to talk to you about shot opportunity and execution. Now this part is pretty simple, but it's where a lot of good calling setups fall apart. The work doesn't end when the bear shows up. It ends up when the right shot presents itself. Before you ever make a sound, you should already know two things. First, where is your shoot line? Right? The exact lane or opening where you're willing to take the shot. Second, what angle you're waiting for. Those decisions need to be made in advance because once a bear appears, everything happens fast and mistakes compound quickly. Guys are excited to kill a bear and they rush a lot of those opportunities. The most common failure here is rushing. Bears often show up close and close creates pressure, but close doesn't mean good. A bear standing in thick cover, quartered poorly, or half hidden isn't a finished opportunity. It's an unfinished setup. If you shoot just because the bear is there, you're reacting instead of executing. Let the bear finish the job for you. Let it step into the opening you already identified. Let it turn into the angle you decided you'd take. That patience is the difference between a clean outcome and a long, uncertain follow-up. The biggest error in predator calling bears is shooting on appearance instead of shooting completion. The setup isn't complete until the bear is in a clear lane, offering you a shot that you planned for, not the one you hoped for in the moment just because he's there. Calling creates opportunity, but discipline closes it. If you've done everything right up to this point, the bear will eventually give you what you need. Your job is to wait for it and not rush the one decision that really matters the most out of all of this. Now, most bear calling attempts fail for reasons that have nothing to do with the call itself. The failure happens before the sound ever goes out or quietly while the hunter thinks nothing is happening. The first biggest mistake is calling in the wrong places. Guys sit where it's comfortable, where they can hide, or where they feel safe instead of where bears actually travel. If bears aren't already moving through the area, calling won't save the setup. The second major failure is not controlling the downwind. Bears trust their nose more than anything else. If a bear can get downwind without being seen, it often will, and the hunt ends without the hunter ever knowing the bear was there. Blind downhill lanes are silent killers of calling setups. Another common mistake is quitting too early. Bears operate on a slower decision-making clock. Many hunters call for 10 or 15 minutes, see nothing, and move on. In reality, the bear may have already heard the call and was still deciding. Ending the sequence early cancels the opportunity. Many hunts also fail because hunters expect noise. Bears don't announce themselves. They're not loud walkers. They tiptoe around. If you're waiting to hear something before you get ready, you're already behind. Most blown opportunities happen because the bear already appeared silently while the hunter was distracted. And finally, sitting inside cover instead of overlooking it eliminates visibility and reaction time. When bears appear close and unseen, rush shots or missed opportunities follow. Calling works, but only when location, wind, patience, and expectations are all aligned. Predator calling for black bears only works when a few non-negotiable conditions are met, right? Strip everything else away and the process becomes pretty simple. All when bears are moving to feed. If bears are actively covering ground, checking slopes, edges, and transition for calories, you can pull them with sound. If bears are parked on easy food and don't need to move, calling is low odds no matter how well you do everything else. Sit where you can see downwind. This matters more than camouflage, concealment, or comfort. Many bears will attempt to swing downwind before committing. If you can't see that lane, you won't see the bear and you'll never know the opportunity existed. Use prey distress sounds. High pitched, urgent sounds that signal easy calories are the most consistent option. You're not trying to impress a bear, you're patiently presenting a simple problem with a simple reward. Call longer than feels comfortable. Bears don't rush decisions. 20 to 30 minutes is the baseline minimum, not the exception. Many bears respond late, and quitting early cancels the setup before it has time to work. And finally, expect those silent, close approaches. Bears often appear without warning. If you're waiting to hear something before you're ready, you're already late. Stay focused on your downwind lanes. Keep movement minimal and let the bear finish the setup. When those pieces come together, predator calling stops feeling so random and it becomes a deliberate tool used at the right time, in the right place, with clear expectations. That's how calling black bears actually works. Now, if you're serious about taking this kind of knowledge deeper, that's exactly why I built Team Backbone. It's more than just a membership. It's a way to sharpen your edge with exclusive tools, strategies, and a tribe of relentless hunters. Inside, you'll get 20% off site-wide on all Backbone Unlimited gear, the option to have a t-shirt shipped to your door every month, full access to the digital content vault of guides, checklists, and backcountry strategies, a private Facebook group with direct access to me and a community of driven hunters, direct call, text, or email access to me for personalized advice on training, hunting strategy, or just sharpening your edge, and automatic entry into monthly gear giveaways. This is built for the guys who train for the hunt, push themselves in the off-season, and want to be part of a tribe that makes them better. If you're ready for that kind of inner circle, then Team Backbone is waiting for you at backboneunlimited.com under our membership tab. Thanks for being here. I appreciate each of you. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.